Well, welcome to the ninth episode of the Seattle Thunderbirds alumni series. The team's been so busy. I've kind of been remiss in getting players in to talk to them and get a conversation going about their time as a Seattle Thunderbird. And one of the groups I've been easily able to get a hold of are the guys from the early 2000s. I've talked to a number of them here. It's a very close-knit group, and we're pleased to bring in another one of those players who played in that era, defenseman for 4 seasons with the T-Birds. We invite Erik Benke into the program. Erik, it's good to see you again, and thanks for taking time out to do this.
Likewise, it's great to see you again as well. I'm happy to do it.
We've been playing a little bit, I guess you would say, email bingo or phone tag to set this up because, my goodness, you guys are busy. You guys have lives. So I appreciate you taking time away from your busy schedule to do that. So just for the fans out there who remember your time here, update them on what you're up to. What are you doing these days?
Yeah, I guess it's been, we were just chatting before, for 20 years since I've been down in Seattle, so a lot has changed. I work in finance now, essentially the equity markets. We manage the pension plans here in Alberta for about 20 some odd pension assets and dowries, those sort of things. So I'm specifically on the equities side of the market there, so we try to find good investments and cover the consumer spaces, which is pretty interesting at times.
Well, I was looking back on your time with the T-Birds between, as we said, 2000 and 2004. You played in 227 games, and I'm thinking about some of the players who are playing with us now are going to play 4 and 5 seasons. They're not going to hit close to that number of games because COVID did a number on them. But 227 games. We were talking before we started the conversation here that your last game with Seattle was almost 20 years to the date of this conversation we're having here in late February 2024. You played your last game with Seattle on March 14th, 2004, up at Key Arena, which is now Climate Pledge Arena, against Everett. Unfortunately, it was a loss. You lost 5-1, but you were +1 in that game. I should mention that. You were +1. Do you remember that last game? Did you know what was your last game that you were going to play as a T-Bird?
Yeah, I remember it. But more sort of retroactively. At the time, I didn't know it was going to be my last game as a T-Bird. That season as a whole was probably a little disappointing for us, where we've had some other better seasons in the years before. And that one was plagued by a lot of injury for myself. And it was a tough year from that standpoint. So I didn't know at the time it was going to be my last game. I would love to have known that. Maybe suck it in and take it all in a little bit more. But it did end up being the last, but I still, looking back, I sort of remember it and it was pretty exciting. So.
Yeah, you mentioned the injury plague year you had that season. I think you were limited to somewhere around 40 games, but you came in with a core group, and we've talked to a few of them like Dustin Johnner and, Greg Black was part of that group. I think he was there every year you were here, Jake Riddle, even a guy like Mark Lindsay was on that team. And then a couple of guys came in the next year, a couple of young hot shots in Nate Thompson. And I know we've traded for Brooks Lake, but also Jake Gertson, a couple of guys, Steve Gertson. I'm sure you're still in touch with some of those guys from that era.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a lot of those guys still keep in touch with. I mean, specifically Steve. We actually knew each other going all the way back to the age of 9. We played together on a brick tournament here locally, and then became really good friends. And just so happened that we ended up in Seattle together. And then I think for 2 years we probably lived 10 blocks apart. So really, really close there. Was in his wedding party. I'm super excited for him there, and still try to keep in touch now. But like you said, lives get busy. He's got 3 kids, and we all sort of at that phase now. So you try to stay in contact as much as you can, but you probably don't do it as much as you.
What I remember, and I kind of link you with him is because you were 2 big defensemen who played together was Matthew Spiller, another big defenseman. I was talking about, looking at your picture on the walls in the back room, and you guys are always in the back line together because you were a couple of big defensemen. But talk about, you mentioned that disappointing last season that you had because the team missed the playoffs that 03-04 season. But the year before, you guys had actually won the first ever U.S. division banner and went to the Western Conference Championship Series that year. Unfortunately, you lost to a pretty good Kelowna team in, I think it was 5 games. And I look back on the rosters, the 2 teams combined, I think there were, what would turn out to be 8 future NHLers or guys who played at some point in the NHL. Now, most of them, unfortunately, were on the Kelowna side of things. I mean, you remember playing against a guy like Duncan Keith in that championship series, the Western Conference Championship?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was a great year for us. Very, very exciting, but also in the same sense, like you mentioned, we ended up losing out to Kelowna, they were a fantastic team. If memory serves me right, they went on to win it all. Which, I mean, leaves you thinking always what would have happened if you maybe would have won it. But if there's a team that you were going to lose, it would have been probably to the eventual winners you'd prefer to. Not that anybody prefers losing, but I mean, Duncan Keith was fantastic. There was a lot of great players in that series, like you said. And it's so interesting just to watch the careers that they've had now and how they continued on. And it's a little strange because, as you said, it's 20 years. So now everybody that you played with is retiring when they've had those amazing careers, and it sort of puts life in a perspective for you.
Let's talk about some of your time in the league. First of all, you, again, were part of that first ever U.S. Division Championship banner, but my first year with the team was your second season, the 2001-2002 year, and you finished below 500. Very young team, but back then it was 10 teams, not 11 teams in the Western Conference, so 10 teams, 8 playoff spots, and you got to the last playoff spot, I think, going into the postseason, and your first round opponent was the rival Portland. And I look back, 12-game season series against Portland. They won that season series 9-3. A lot of the games weren't close. 6 games down in Portland for you in the regular season. You lost all 6 of them. Yet somehow, some way, in that first round playoff series, you found a way to upset them in Game 7 and won 2 games on the road, including Game 7. What do you remember about that? Because I'm going to bring up a memory and see if it jogs you, something in you. But what do you remember about that 7-game series against Portland that year?
I mean, obviously, given just the rivalry and everything that happens between the two teams, and us being pretty big underdogs in that series, as you sort of laid out. I can't remember if it was Game 1 or Game 2. You mentioned Matthew Spiller. He went down with an injury, and it was a pretty big blow to us. But it turned out to be probably the most fun series that I ever played in, just from the sheer competitiveness of it. How much the two fan bases got into it. It was absolutely fantastic, and to be able to come in and upset them and knock them out in Game 7 in their own rink was amazing. So probably one of my favorite memories, if not my favorite memory from Seattle.
Yeah, in that Game 7, Trevor Johnson had scored a power play goal with about 4 minutes remaining to give the T-Birds a 3-2 lead. Do you know what happened after that? Should I bring up the memory?
You'll have to jog my memory specifically, but I think I know what you're going to say.
You took a penalty with about 3 minutes to go, a holding penalty. I'm just wondering if you're sweating bullets in the penalty box as the team's killing off that penalty to hold on to that 3-2 lead.
It was a little nerve-wracking. I didn't remember exactly when that happened, but I remember sitting in there, and there was a lot of taps on the shin pads when I got out of that one, and we were okay there.
Well, you played at what was then known as Key Arena. It's now Climate Pledge Arena, where the Kraken play. What are some of the memories you have of playing in that building? Obviously, it's in the middle of Seattle. It's an NHL size facility that you're playing in. I know they've updated it since, but what are some of the memories you have from playing there?
Yeah, I mean, tons of great memories from there. I don't know which specific ones jog my memory right now. Some of those playoff series you talked about. The one with Portland, obviously the following, 2 years later, when we went all the way to play Kelowna there, a ton of great games. I remember some very entertaining times as well with the crew around there. The Zamboni driver was a very interesting guy who would always bring a smile to your face.
Zamboni John, yeah.
Yeah. No, so a lot of sort of unique memories there, along with all the games as well, and just the fan base was incredible. And like you said, it was more of a NHL size facility, so it really sort of put everything into perspective for you when you were playing there, which was great.
Now, there was no Edmonton Oil Kings team in the league at that point. I think Vancouver had just joined as an expansion team. Everett would come. I think your final 2 seasons, they would join the league, or at least your final season they would be in. but going up there to play in your home province, obviously Red Deer was probably the closest to your hometown, and getting a chance to play in front of family and friends in some of those buildings like the Saddle Dome, it certainly had to be a big point in your career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was always fun. We only did one big Eastern road swing every year and got to play out there. So it was always important when it happened. Like I said, a lot of friends would come down, definitely to Red Deer, a fair bit to Calgary as well. But living in Edmonton and growing up and having a lot of our friends here, the chance to come down to Seattle, always appealing to Edmontonians, especially in the middle of winter. So actually, I had a lot of friends come down to Seattle as well, and they love the city. Yeah.
Now the team will take an overnight trip to go to Kelowna and Kamloops. They'll leave the day before and stay overnight, and then play the game the next day. Back then, we drove up the day of the game, and I'm wondering if you remember the stop in Hope at the Husky truck stop for the pregame meal in the back room there.
I do, and it was spaghetti and chicken drumsticks, I believe, every single time. So yeah, no, definitely remember that. I remember a few times too driving up there in a pure snowstorm. I think our bus driver's name at the time was Eli, and I just would pop up and the snow would be blaring and coming up, and I just go back to bed. I don't want to see this. I trust him entirely, and I'll wake up once we get to Kelowna or Kamloops.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you remember Elijah Johnson was the bus driver at that time. I still see him sometimes on Facebook when the T-Birds made both their trip in 2017 and last spring to the Western Hockey League Championship Series. He was, posting on social media, his support of the team. So, he retired about 10 years ago, but he still follows the team, and it's great that you remember him. So next time I see him, I'm going to pass that along. I know he remembers a lot of the players from his time driving the bus with Seattle. I got to ask you, have you followed the team, especially the last few years when they've, finally kind of broke through and won 2 Etchenau Cups?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's following it very closely. Was really hoping to win that Memorial Cup, which was oh so close. But I mean, everything that's happened with the organization there and the success that they've had is it's amazing. But credit goes to everybody, not just the players who have been fantastic, but the entire organization and what they've built there. Really proud of that, and sort of to be able to have some ties to that, even if it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, I know your good friend Steve Gertson is still connected with the team as a development coach for the players. He comes down here occasionally. Have you had the opportunity to come back to Seattle at any point in the last 2 decades?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a couple of times work has taken me down there, so those are a little bit different trips. But after leaving, there was probably a couple of years where I didn't come back, and then one of the things I really got into when I was in Seattle was NFL football as well, or following the Seahawks, and they were my team. And I made a point of coming down and seeing a game every year at least. That obviously ended with COVID and just personal family things going on. I haven't been able to be back since, but I'm hoping to start that tradition again this upcoming fall. So.
Well, I hope you get a chance to come down and see the place where we play now with the Accesso Shore Center in Kent. Not just because it's different from where you played when you were here at Key Arena, but you certainly stop by there and check out Climate Pledge too. But the fact that banner again is hanging up there, that division banner from the 02-03 season, you guys went 44, 22 and 3. I think that season. That's a part of you. It's something that you can hang your hat on, that you were part of that team that won the first ever U.S. Division championship banner. And I know you wanted to hang something else up in the rafters, but got close. But a big part of the organization, as they say, once a T-Bird, always a T-Bird. So don't be a stranger. Come down and check out the new facilities. We appreciate your time, Erik. It's good to catch up with you. As I said, it's shocking to see when I look up your stats on the website and see that you're almost 40 years old now. You're going to hit 40 this summer, right? Is that true? Can that be true?
Yeah, that is true. So it's I don't feel it, but that number's coming. Yep.
Well, I appreciate again all your time here, and we know you're busy, but again, you're part of this family, and want you to keep being a part of the T-Bird organization in some way. So thank you for your time. I appreciate you joining us here on this episode.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
And that is episode 9 of the T-Birds Alumni Series with former T-Bird defenseman Erik Benke, and we appreciate you joining us and tuning in.